Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. On my screen here, maybe not on yours, especially if you're just listening, but I'm looking at Joe Corcione and Brian Peterson. We're going to be having a debate today. It's the States Debates, 4th edition. We have a surprise 5th edition in the works as well. But the whole point of these States Debates is we think States is worth thinking about for a long time before the race. A lot of times as fans, those of us who are diehards, we start to think about it. Sure, we hear the field, we see the golden tickets, all that could be done better. We've talked about that before. But we just wanted to do our part to say, let's start geeking out earlier than normal. So that way when race day comes, we are the most educated and therefore genuinely most excited. So we've had greats like Carl Meltzer on here, old Speed Goat. We've had AJW. Who am I missing, Brian? Who's that number 3? It's not coming to mind right now.
We had Troy, AJW,
Troy Meadows.
Carl.
That's nothing personal, Troy. I just couldn't remember your name right there. And each one we had a great conversation, a great debate that you can all go back and listen to those. So now as we get closer to Western States, Brian and I, Wolfie, we've got coverage coming up at Western States and Paris Fashion Week. I know it doesn't quite make sense on its face, but I promise it will. On the other side, it's really hard to cast this vision to say, get excited about Paris Fashion Week and Western States. It's the same weekend, but this is like the ultimate marriage of all the personalities involved with Borderlands. And really, I think it's a great manifestation of Wolfie because he loves this culture that's happening at Paris Fashion Week. And he's mega Western States geek. So I think it's probably going to make most sense if you just engage with us. So we're headed that way. We've got merch coming, all sorts of fun stuff with Bad Runner's Take. This is an expression of Bad Runner's Take. Before we go any further, for the second time on the podcast, but it's been over a year, Joe Corcione, welcome back.
Oh, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I was hyping you guys up before coming on here, seeing everything you guys have built and the content you pushed out, and just everything about Borderlands has been amazing, from all the shows to Wolfie's World to everything. So it's an honor to be here once again.
Yeah, dude, thanks.
And just congrats on all the success you guys had. It's seriously amazing.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. I love seeing you go big out there. I mean, obviously, Everyday Ultra as a coaching organization, and I use the term organization fondly because I'm a mega fan of entrepreneurship and swinging for things and going for things. So congrats on what you're building there. I mean, do you have off the top of your head, do you know how many athletes are actually on any given month who are under your coaching or your tree of coaches? Do you know that number?
Yeah, so for me, I coach about 35 athletes right now. So personally, and then across all of our coaches, we have about 7 coaches total under me. We have over 160 athletes total. So Dang. It's just super cool to see.
Yeah.
And I love it because, for me, Everyday Ultra was started to help people through the podcast, and then coaching was started to help people one-on-one. And I always thought it's as one person, I can only help so many people while still delivering great coaching. So we added on a team of 7 other just amazing coaches, and it's just been so cool. And I truly think podcasting is great and you can learn some stuff, but if you ever want to take it to the next level, coaching is cool. So it's cool to see the reach going out, and I'm super blessed. And I believe coaching's for everyone. It's not just for the elite. It's not just for people on the podium. If you are just, a mom who has 3 kids and has a job and wants to just figure out how to do this all right or get in your crazy schedule, coaching is still for you. And I think that's the cool paradigm we're looking to push out in the world.
Yeah, I think we have different expressions of it, but we have a similar spirit to what we're about, is that on any level, anywhere there's a gatekeeper, we want to see that gatekeeper or that ethos destroyed. Because if this is the best sport in the world, if people really mean that, then we should let everybody in and do everything we can to make sure more people come, because it's the best. And 100%. Ryan and I do that our own way. You do that your own way. But in the end, we're running in the same direction. We want everybody here. So.
Exactly. And that's why I love being on the show, because you guys get it. You guys are our people. And so thank you for destroying the gatekeepers in the community. We need more of it.
Yeah, dude. Well, let's debate. These are fun. I enjoyed these with Troy, with AJW, with Speed Goat, and now with Joe. All legends, all thankful to have them involved with us in this. But today we are talking about course records. Whose course record is more vulnerable? Is Courtney's more vulnerable, or is Jim's more vulnerable? Let me tell you, I mean, even as I just reviewed before hitting record, these course records are bonkers. I don't know that either is vulnerable, though I would love to see both of them fall, because what a fun day that would be. Jim at 14:09. I was there the year before when he got 14:20. 2019, he got 14:24, something like that. And that was absurd. And then he knocked 15 plus minutes off of that. Courtney, 15:29. I mean, just insane. Okay, so Brian is saying that Courtney's record is vulnerable. Joe is saying that Jim's record is vulnerable. And the way this works is we're going to have 2 5-minute, they're each going to get 5 minutes for opening statements. They're going to get 3-minute rebuttals. We're going to have discussion. Then we'll have 3 minutes of closing. We are not rigid, but the point is that we have a great conversation surrounding the sport we love and the event that we love the most. All right. Brian, shall you go first? Set the tone?
Sure.
All right. Hit it.
All right, man. Well, Joe, it's good to have you on. Certainly glad that we're debating and not racing. I think I probably would have had a good chance against my other 3 opponents to knock them out at a race, but certainly would get dusted by you. So always good to have you on, buddy. So when we thought up the debate, I was open-minded. I thought both of them were stout course records. Let Joe do the coin toss, and he picked to go defend Jim's. And so, I took Courtney's, and the more I researched it, I think I got the stronger hand here. So I just got to make sure I don't fumble it and fold here with a losing record. So, yeah, why do I think Courtney's record is more vulnerable? Well, I wore the Motley Crue shirt because it's all about celebrating the girls, right? I think what we're seeing right now is kind of the renaissance age of the women's field, and I think for the last decade, it's fair to say that their competitive depth, both aggregately across the top 10 and at the tip of the spear, was a bit behind the men's field, especially at a race like Western States. And I think you're starting to see things professionalize, get more competitive, with the women. And so the women's times, I think, they're not chomping at the margins yet, which is what I think we're starting to see at the men's side of the field. You look at the top 10 all time, for the women, there's a lot of parity there, a lot of name diversity. With the men's top 10, you've got Jim dominating 4 of the top 10 spaces. So what we're going to get into here is really, this is a decision on, is Jim's greatest threat to his course record Jim and only Jim? In that case, then I don't think it's a vulnerable course record because it remains Jim. So in Courtney's course record, or the females, I think the greatest threat to Courtney's course record is the field. I mean, you've got names rising up like Fu Zhao Zhang, you got Emily Hawgood, Hannah Allgood, you got Tara Dower, Abby Hall, right? The list goes on. You got some killers. And then you obviously have Courtney and Katie themselves, who are going to keep coming back, I think, for a couple more cracks at it. And I think Katie's the interesting one. I think there's probably not any one man in the field that you would have as much confidence saying they will take down the course record as you would for Katie going back to Western States and taking down Courtney's. She's had 2 cracks at it, and she's already at the doorstep of it. And I think her fitness levels are just continuing to improve. So again, the greatest threats, I think, for the women's side of the field have a better runway to take down the course record. On the men's side, again, we've seen, some of these names year after year at Western States, and they've either already put up their best performance, or we're left kind of scratching our heads to think, are we going to see them go sub 1409? So, I mean, I think that's what we're going to get into. Again, like I said, it's going to be a debate here, I think, of is the greatest threat to Jim's course record Jim and only Jim? If not, I think Joe's going to probably pose a few names that he thinks, are equally as capable. But it's going to be interesting to see kind of how he thinks the men aren't already in their era of marginal gains like you would see in track and field or marathoning. Because a lot of these guys are going to have to take off some serious amounts of time, like a half hour plus, to get down below Jim's record. And I don't know if that's reasonable to think, or just my argument, is it really a stronger case than the names I've listed on the women's field for Courtney? So we'll leave it there. I think we'll get into more of the nuanced takes there. But Joe, interesting to hear what your takes are.
Yeah, no, I love it. And great points for sure. 100%. And listen, I think Jim's record is absolutely incredible. It's one of the greatest feats we've seen in ultra running. So this is really hard to put together the case on here too. So it's funny because I would have said the similar argument for Jim's thing is that the field for the men's side is getting better. When you look at someone like Rod Favard, right? So I always think about Rod Favard as he's an amazing athlete, second at Western States last year. But if you look at him from the years prior, yes, he had a top 10 at Western States one year. I think he was M11 another year too, but he climbed up the ranks pretty quickly onto there too. Then you look at the emergence of guys like David Roche, who had, in the early years, a little bit of a rough background getting into the ultra scene. And then once it started to click, I mean, he's kicking names and taking ass, you know what I mean, out there, like going out at Leadville, smashing this course record, and Javelina doing so well in the heat as well too. And then even you got guys coming back this year like Killian Jornet, who's coming back for his third time at Western States and having that on there too. And looking at his Strava, I mean, posting up a marathon with 5,000 feet of gain at a 6:30 pace. I mean, the dude is Killian, right? So he's super, super fit. So I think when you look at the same argument with the women, I mean, I think the men's side is there too. But here's where I think that the men are a little bit different on this side too with Jim's record, is that usually the men go a little bit more aggressive. So while I think the margin of error on the men's side is usually a lot bigger, right? That you see people go out just guns blazing. I mean, usually course record splits right out of the way. I think it's just like investing, higher risk, higher reward. So therefore, like, I think the men have a greater side to go out and smash this course record because they're going to go out and usually go really, really high, right? Like you do Courtney's original course record, right? It's amazing. She negative split that thing on a pretty hot day too, as well too. So very controlled race, very calculated. And you look at most of the women who race out there, they're very calculated, very controlled. Not saying that someone could go and not overtake Courtney, because I think Katie Scheid clearly can, if you look at like the way her fitness is and everything as such too. However, I do think you have more men taking more of those risks, because even if you look at like Katie Scheid's performance that year, and even just the year with Courtney when she did it too, I mean, it was pretty much Courtney, Katie by 17 minutes behind, and then it was just big gap in between. Now we're seeing that gap close on the women's side, which I think is totally true. But even if you look at last year against Jim, like Rod was like minutes away from Jim, and then right behind him was Hayden. And so you take this year, now granted we've had a shakeup this year with Western States, with Jim being out and Hayden being out, and just a little bit lesser of a stellar field than what's had hoped. But if I look at guys like David Rocho, I mean, he's going to be pedal to the metal. I mean, I think he could break the course record, and I think Killian could break the course record, mostly from the standpoint of I think these guys are just going to race a lot harder. So while I think there's maybe less people who probably can break Jim's record, I think there's more women who can break Courtney's. I do think, though, that the chance, because men race these races harder and the game is changing on ultras, where for at least the men's side, it's not as much of this control game anymore. It's most of this, how much can you run at aerobic threshold without blowing up? And I think when you have that there, it's either DNF or you get basically course record at this point. And I think you're getting a lot more people with that racing style. And that's where I see that on Jim's side being a little bit more. So same argument, but if I look at the dynamics a little bit more about how things are raced, I think the men have a little bit more of an edge just because they take bigger swings. And, you get someone get a good crack of the bat, they're going to hit it right out of the park past 1409. And honestly, I think on a good day, I think someone like David Roche or Killian could go sub 14 at Western States.
Wow.
Dang.
So, I mean, I think interesting is some of the names you've mentioned here have one thing in common, and that's a lot of scar tissue. Mm-hmm. So we already mentioned that, Hayden Hawks is out, Jim himself is out, Jonathan Ray is out, right? They all got the injury bug. A case could be made, obviously, that this could be, due to the amount of training load that they feel that they've got to carry with intensity and volume to be at the fitness level on race day, right? So there's something to be said there at the men's field, is like, can they figure out how to train and stay healthy? Otherwise, this is kind of a moot point. David's got cortisone in his knee. Killian's kind of just crossing his fingers and hoping the knee holds up. He's also aging, right? So, a lot of things there that are working against some of the best in the men's field right now. And then you've got the Jared Hazen effect. Is Rod Favard the next Jim Walmsley, or is he today's Jared Hazen? So I think Jared Hazen sits there nicely at the top 10 as a reminder of putting up a sub 420 or 1430 time and never coming back to that time again. So we'll see. I don't wish that on anybody. Again, this is just a debate. And so I think, Jared Hazen is an interesting, case study of guys who have been able to put up fast times at Western States, but then, not been able to match them or certainly take off the time necessary to get below Jim's record. To the women's field, I mean, when you look at the top 10, the saturation of it, 90% of the times on there in the top 10 are from 23 and 24. So again, it just further validates that this is a maturing and improving field. And with that, I think mindset shift. We saw the mindset shift, within the decade on the men's side, where it was no longer the race starts at the river, right? And so I think the women are just slowly starting to, catch up and hopefully embrace, some of the tactics and mental strategies from the men's side of the field. And I think that's just going to continue to cascade the overall times faster and faster. The men's side of the field, it's 50-50 as far as, where the top 10 times fall. So 50% of them are from 23 to 24, and the other 50% are outside of that. They're a bit older. So you're starting to see some times still hang in the top 10 that are, 5-6 years old now. So again, I think we're starting to see that ceiling of marginal gains. I mean, really, because right now what we're saying is that like, it's going to take somebody to just have that day with perfect weather and the right, variables to go sub 1409, possibly sub 14. I don't think you have to put that same amount of context around a couple women having a great day at states and going under 1529. So again, I think the variables that have to come into play are less in quantity for the women's side to achieve a sub 1529 time versus the men's field.
Gosh, perfect. That was exactly 3 minutes. Your turn, Joe.
No, great points there too. And I do think, 100% agreed on everything with like the women just being tighter on there too. I agree on the durability on the men's side. Clearly, we're seeing that. I mean, even look at athletes in the race like Cole Watson. I mean, he had a sacral stress fracture earlier this year. Like we're seeing, I think, more injuries on the men's side than the women's side. And, who knows if that's overtraining or not. But you get someone who can get the training right and who can push the pedal to the metal, right? Like you can get someone like that too. And yeah, sure, like David has like the knee issue, but I look at someone with perfect conditions and he can go out, I think, with less than perfect conditions and still do well, right? You look at John Ray's course record at Javelina 100, and which is, 1257 or 1258. David was only seconds behind that in weather that was nearly like 12, 13, 14 degrees hotter. So if you can take that on an even just decent day at Western States compared to Jim, like I think he can close the margins on there too. Now, again, do I think it's just David? No. If you look at a lot of these different course records I've kind of held for years, right? Rob Krar's Leadville 100, or sorry, not Rob Krar's, the Leadville 100 record too that stood for years. David came and smashed that as well too. Javelina was held, for years by Pat Regan before Dakota came in and smashed it, and then John Ray came in and smashed it too. Like people are taking down these records in charge too, because I think all of this technology such as super shoes and high carb and topical cooling, all things that I think are very, very great keys to success at Western States. I think the men are just taking them and just putting basically 3, 4, 5 times their stock in it. I mean, you listen to David Roche taking in 140 grams of carbs. Now, I keep bringing up David Roche. Like, do I think David Roche is the guy to do it? Potentially. Like, I think he's got a great shot. But if you look at everyone else, they're also doing high carb. They're also doing super shoes. They're also doing topical cooling. I think David Roche is like the best outward example of him taking it to the extreme. But that's why I think like the guys do have like a bigger chance of taking this because they take everything to the extreme. Now it's either you get injured and you're not healthy in the start line, or you hit that home run, which I think is a big thing in there too. But I also think that when it comes to like the competitive pressure too, I think it's going to push more people. I think like if you had someone in the women's field, like Courtney in that year, right? Like going out and pushing, you look at that next year, everyone saw what she could do. It's almost like the 4-minute mile effect where everyone was like, oh, like we can do this. But someone goes at Western States running, sub 14 splits in the beginning, people are going to chase. Whereas if someone doesn't, like that field's going to be slower. And I think you're going to get that bigger gravitational pull effect from the men's field, just given that chase in there too. So yes, I think everyone's kind of going in there too, but who knows what the times would have been this year without Courtney, last year without Courtney. I don't know, right? Maybe people saw what Courtney can do and they're like, oh, that's what's possible on this course. Then the whole field shifted up because again, you had Courtney, Katie, and everybody was hours behind both of them on that next year. And even Katie, improved her time greatly on the next year, but still didn't catch Courtney. And so I think that you have more of that just like community effect of people just pushing so much harder. And I think when you look at course records falling like Javelina, or not even Javelina, coming close to Javelina this year, I shouldn't say fallen, but very close, in my opinion, close. I think the men's, because they swing so hard, the conditions don't matter as much for the men's.
Yeah.
All right. Before open discussion here, first thing I want to note, because I was corrected, I was having a back and forth with my friend Billy White there in where's he at? Stockholm. And I was making fun of how old Killian is just for fun. Cause he's a Euro homer. And so he thinks it's gonna be them. I was just surprised to find out Killian's 37. He's been in the sport forever. I was thinking he was like 50. So Killian's 37, David's 36, Jim's 35. So though Killian has probably more miles in aggregate, but that was more for me than for anybody else to say, yeah, I thought he was old. I mean, 37 is not young, but I'm 42. So 37 feels young. I haven't hit my pinnacle yet, and so I don't know if Killian has.
Yeah,
Also,
people forget Killian won Western States when he was like 21.
yeah, I didn't
Like
realize
that's
that.
crazy.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was his age when he did it. Okay, and then so I like hearing Brian's point of the women haven't started chomping at the margins yet. That's what stuck out to me, and so that's why he feels like Courtney's is more vulnerable, because once we've seen what happens in the men's race of every, that you start chomping at the margins, rather than cutting off an hour, you're cutting off a minute and so on. So I'm hearing that, but on the other end, the three things that Joe said, like only a coach could: the topical cooling, the high carbs, and the thing, and the other stuff like that all of that stuff is post Jim's last record to some degree. I'm not saying that he probably wasn't doing it, but there's so much new stuff coming as a resource to these runners that combine that with lose your head, go for the course record rather than just for the win, that maybe a man might be more likely to do. That there's probably some room there. That could be some room. So I don't want to put words in either of your mouth. That's just what I'm hearing right now. But now, open discussion. Whoever has something to say, go for it.
Yeah, I think this will be like a hard pivot, right? Because I've been trying to prove my point all debate, but I got to, speak directly to the women now, right? Like I got to speak this into existence. Like they do have to go out and execute and do this. Like, one of the things that's working against me is like the top 10 spread all time for women's times is 15:29 to 17:07. So it's an hour and 37 minute. They haven't tightened that up yet. And that says to women, you've got to take some of the men's racing tactics. You can't break the elastic so early. You've got to go out on these course record splits, and you got to stay in the pack, and you got to believe in yourself and want that, right? Because the men's top 10 is 14:09, 14:46. It's a 36 minute. It's an hour less, right? Like we should see things with greater similarity there for both sides of the field. But one of the interesting things here, and it'll be interesting, Joe, get you a take on this. So 15:29 is 34th all time, including men, right? So like if you take Courtney's time, she's 34th. If you take Katie's time, 15:45, she's 51st. So my case is that no other race I would think would you see the women's all time be in the 34th percentile, right? I don't know. I'd have to do more research on it, but doesn't that strike you as maybe still showing signs of improvement? I think there's women who have like all-time results at some other well-raced courses that, like Katie Scheid at Canyons. I can't imagine that's the 34th fastest time, but maybe I could be right. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's a great point. I would maybe counter argue that and say that if she's 34th, then there's 32 people who can probably come up and swipe Jim. Like that's how I would say it too. I think there's just more like competitors in the pool who can take down Jim's record. I mean, again, go back to Rod Favard, right? He came minutes behind Jim, and a breakout performance for him too. And I forgot exactly which race it was, but he took down a Jim course record earlier last year or this year, like, which is amazing. Like, and it was
Nine Trails, I think. Was that the Santa Barbara race or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But like I think anyone taking down a Jim course record, regardless, is impressive. And regardless of how old it is. And to see Rod go out and do that is great. Now, I know he mentioned he was having some like breathing issues, like going into canyons or something like that too, and didn't have as great of a performance. But I think when you look at that and people taking down these Jim records, I mean, I think it's there. I mean, I think there's one name we haven't even talked about that I think could come out and swipe everyone. I think it's Adam Peterman. I mean, people forget Adam Peterman won Western States a couple years ago. He took down Jim's record at Speed Goat, which was like insane record as well too. And then also like he's taken down a few other Jim records as well too. Like for a while he was near perfect record or I think he was perfect record going into Western States with every single ultra. Now he had injuries and he was coming back, and so a little bit there too. Comes out and gets a golden ticket at CCC and has an amazing performance out there too. I mean, I think someone like Adam Peterman, who has clearly shown that he has been better than some of Jim's longstanding course records, can go out and swipe it too. So I think it's a totally valid point to say, like, yes, there is room to grow on there too. But I think the more men that are even before Courtney just shows that there's more people who can go out and strike Jim. Now, even too, let's just talk about Jim for a second. I mean, I think if Jim was in the race this year, I think he clearly breaks his own record. And I would say personally that like Jim has a bigger threat against himself than Courtney does. Personally, I think so. Because, when you look at Jim, if he misses, a lot of the time he misses, it's usually due to like injury or anything like that too. Like you look at UTMB last year, injury, but ever since he like won UTMB, I mean, you look at Chianti, where he just slayed the field. He slayed Vincent Bouillet, slayed Killian. Now, Killian, I know, was dealing with a little bit of, lingering niggles and things like that too. But I mean, that was an insane performance on conditions that were so freaking muddy and so freaking crazy. And so I think if Jim was in like this race this year, whether or not it's 95 degrees in the canyons or 70 degrees in the canyons, I think he could have been sub 14. Whereas like Courtney, I do think she can go out against her record, but do I think like the margin of what she could blast her own record is big? Maybe not. It was kind of surprising to see what happened at Cocodona. But granted, whole different ball game, whole different race. But I think like Jim's precision and his like margin of error when he misses is just so slow. Because I would consider this might be a really hot take. I would consider his win last year a slight like miss on Jim's end, because I think if you button up some things, and I haven't, obviously I can't get into his head or anything that such too, but I thought last year Jim was going to go sub 14. But I mean, I don't know, maybe something happened. I mean, looking at UTMB, if it dropped, maybe he was having some lingering stuff. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just kind of making speculation, but I think Jim on like a good day could get sub 14, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we all would love to see it. I'm not going to root against it. It was a super bummer to see him, and Hayden specifically pull out this year. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Adam Peterman, and yeah, I mean, for all of his, accolades, the year he won Western States, I think it was like 15-20 or something like that, right? So pretty pedestrian in terms of where we need it to be to have any sort of legitimacy at taking down Jim's course record. I certainly don't think that's his ceiling, right? He's got potential to obviously get into the mid 14 somewhere. And then you just, I just think it's probably fair to say you're not going to go out and crack 1409 in your first Western States. So this is going to be a journey for some of these guys. I think, Hayden Hawks, right? Like, I think we would say he's probably in the top 5 of guys who have the talent and the experience to do it. And yet he's also somebody that's, a half hour away from the 1409 mark. And so, again, it's just one of those things where like you start looking around and really conceptualizing what it would look like for somebody else not named Jim to take down the 1409 time. And it just starts to become, quite a daunting task because it's going to take probably 2 or 3 cracks at it. Just like you saw Jim, right? Like the 1409 was on his, 4th attempt on States or 3rd attempt on States or somewhere around there. So yeah, I mean, what about like the next generation? You got the Hans Troyers, right? You got, who do you got on the women's side? You got like Shea Aquinow, right? Like, so if you think about the 20 somethings that are going to be living with only Jim and Courtney, not living with Scott and Trayson, right? So which side do you think there of the 20 somethings, has the best crack to take down a course record?
Yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, Hans Troyer is a specimen. I mean, and I had him on the podcast recently, and listen to this
shout out real
guy.
quick. Hans Troyer has a documentary coming out, I think like in 2 weeks or something like that, week and a half. I'm pretty stoked on that because I don't know much about him. I'm stoked. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, we definitely watch that documentary because I think, whether or not he has a great race out there, and I think he definitely has the potential to do this. So you listen to this kid, he has all like the mindset tools to get to a place where he can have greatness. I mean, I would even argue he's probably like the fittest sheer fitness guy on that starting line on the men's side. However, I think experience matters. Like, I believe for Hans, this will be his like first 100 miler. And so, and I think that plays a role. Like, I think that really does play a role in there. Like, going back to the Adam Peterman thing, that was his first 100 miler. Like, think about that. Your first 100 miler, you win 15:26. And I think everybody listened to this, whether you're pros or anything as such too. And granted, again, he's an outlier, but David Roche, like coming in on, Leadville and just obliterating it on his first shot at it too. But I think, again, an outlier. But anytime we've done like a first of a race, we learn things, right? I remember the first time I did my first 100 miler, there's things that you don't know until you're actually in it and experience it. And then you can see these great progressions and make refinements and things like that too. And Adam Peterman's had years to refine those things. Like, so he's stepping up to the 100-mile distance for the first time in a while. And I think he's going to come back and just be super, super dialed in on this too. So and he's a name that I'm not seeing tossed around like at all. Like, everyone's talking about David, everyone's talking about Killian, and I'm like, dude, like, man, I think Adam Peterman can go out and have a day too. But all that being said, I think the experience matters. So, do I think that this year someone in like the younger pool from both sides of the men or the women, I think they can have great performances, but I think this is a year where experience is going to matter. And when I see the people who can contend against Jim, I mean, you have a lot more people with years and experience and learnings. You combine that with the new tools we kind of all talked about, experience plus new tools plus science. I mean, man, there can be destruction. I think on both sides for sure. But again, I just think the magnitude of what people pour into the men's side, I think is just going to just spill over.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to throw in real quick, just because we have people that fact check us. Adam Peterman had 15-13. His winning year was 15-13. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Peterman's going to have to learn how to be, I think, a champion again. I think some of his results, after coming back from injury, the sport's kind of, I think he came in at the right time, I guess, and hit the right races and was just riding this high. But yeah, I mean, he's, obviously proven to be immortal. He's had some results here that don't reflect his early days in the field. But yeah, I mean, Hans Troyer is going to be a fascinating one to watch in his career because he is young and, he does have the right mindset. So I don't think it's going to be this year for the women. It's probably hard to say, you've got to have Courtney or Courtney, I think, in the field to kind of be that matriarch of the pacing, right? To kind of come in and pull these, less experienced or less accomplished runners up to that split level. So I don't know if it'll be this year. I think the women will be racing for the win, and for, a lot of them, it'll be I think we are. Yeah, it's 100% we're going to get a first-time winner at Western States. And so I think the mindset, which is a fair play for the women this year, is to race for the win, not for anything other than that. And I mean, the same could be said for the men. I think, a lot of the men, are looking to get out there and, race for the win as well. I don't know if it's the year where they've got course record aspirations other than David, who's put that out there in a big way. But I think everybody else would be happy with a win, no matter what the time record is. Killian, he's got his story of coming back from, a 14-year absence from the sport, which is, I think, disgusting. I've said that before. I think it's one of the biggest regrets, that we have as fans of not seeing Killian come over here and race Western States more often. I've said it. I think he's ducked the most competitive American race because it's something that he doesn't like. But if you like competition, where have you been, Killian? Right. So I'll get off my soapbox now. It's not a Killian bash, but everybody that's this Euro fanboy of Killian, why has he not shown up and raced over here quite as frequently as we would have liked to have seen? And, hopefully this year he does go back and, move himself up the list. It's a shame to see him behind, Courtney on the all-time list. So, hopefully he can deliver that. But yeah, I mean, I think we've had a good conversation here. I think we parsed out some different things, and I knew you were going to bring it. I knew it was going to be a fun conversation. Yeah, anything else you want to cover off on?
Well, I just want to acknowledge real quick in the event that it wasn't, but I'm sure it was. Was that shade on Killian saying that Courtney's faster?
Yeah, right. I think
that's really good. I just want to make sure that gets brought out because that's good shade.
Yeah, I think Courtney has ran faster than Killian at States, and so.
All right. Well, you guys chat. I'm gonna go in and fact check that.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, and this, all great points there for sure too. And it'll be really interesting to see Killian. I mean, one of the cool things was he put out a recent YouTube video talking about how he's a different athlete now. And I always love to see when people with all this experience go and smash it. Like, I think one of the most inspiring performances that I've seen as an ultra fan was Ludo Pomeray going out and crushing the Hard Rock course record. A Killian course record at Hard Rock at 51? I don't remember. It's over 50, which is like amazing, right? Because you look at Killian, he's 30 freaking 6, like Josh said before. Like, that's still even before potentially Killian's prime, which is like bananas to say considering all of his stuff, right? So, I mean, I think experience is going to matter. And if you have someone like, to your point too, like, I think the women are going to more race for the win, but you have even just one guy like David Roche going for the course record. Again, you get that aggregate effect. One guy goes, people are not going to let him out of the sight. And so it's just going to drag people. Yes, a lot more carnage. Yes, a lot more disparage in there. but I think it's going to drive the times. Now, one point I'll give to you, I'm actually going to advocate for your side, which I want to do because this is a hard argument. And I think both of the sides have very, very good merit. One thing to keep in mind, Courtney's course record was on a pretty hot year. I believe it was 90 degrees. Jim's course record was on a cooler year. So that's the one thing where it says like the conditions definitely favor the women. So I will give you that for sure. And I think that's like a cool consideration to have. And, I'm wondering, I think just as a general question and a fan of the sport, is with all these things too, like how much are these conditions really going to matter? Because at Javelina, the conditions showed this year that it was only a matter of minutes, not just from David, but Jeff McGavero and Dan Green, who all came sub 13 in 99-degree temperatures, which is insane. Wow. By the way, curious just as a fan, just see what the hell Dan Green does after obliterating Cocodona and now just going into Western States. People also forget Harry Saberta is doing the same thing. He's doing the Coco Western double. That's a cool within the race battle I'm looking for.
Oh, dude, we're already on it. I love that you're on it too. We're following the 200-mile specialists in Western States. That's the thread that we're on.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. But I think this year, like the thing I'm most curious to see is how much are the conditions actually going to matter and how much have we normalized those conditions with the new training kind of interventions that we've had and racing interventions. And I think that's just going to be a cool thing to watch unfold.
Yeah, I mean, you're a coach. Conditions always matter, right? Yeah. I mean, if you've got a road marathon and it's, 45 degrees at start, whatever they consider the ideal temperature, you're going to see the potential for you getting 100% out of the fitness you put into your block versus like Western States. Like if we caught a cool year, they're going to go out there and they're going to shred it. Same with Javelina, right? I mean, I can't imagine, what somebody could do at Javelina with an overcast, cool day. So yeah, I think conditions always will come into play, but it just speaks to the fact of how much they're improving year over year in fitness to where the weather can't become a bigger issue than the gains that they've accumulated with their fitness. And so they'll be able to go in and run slightly faster, even under harsher conditions. It's incredible. Right. And then you've also got like this whole movement with high carb during training, which I can speak to, man. I've been like cranking the hyperlight out, and it's like the recovery and bounce back from harder efforts and longer efforts when you're fueling correctly, giving yourself the right amount of nutrients there. Like, it's insane. It's not just in the activity itself, but it's just how you feel, how you sleep. Like, I think everybody's starting to tune into that. And yeah, it's crazy. It's a whole different environment than when, Rob Craw and Timothy Olsen and these other heroes were out there racing shirtless with just a bandana and a handheld.
It is nuts. I know, like the developments have been just kind of insane. And you look at like old time ultra versus new time ultra, it's just a whole different game. One other thing that I think is super interesting to think about, we didn't mention about Hans is coached by David Roche. And I think this is like the first time in a while we've seen a high level coach and a protege going against each other and could be up on there too, which is pretty interesting to kind of think about. So I don't know, you got a guy like Hans who's coached by one of the best 100-miler athletes right now, in my opinion. Like, I'm curious to see if like what the bleed over effect on that is too. But I think that's a cool little interesting storyline.
I have a question. Okay, David Roach has a dog in this fight. He's got something to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's got an athlete in it. I talked to one coach, and I can't remember who it was, but at one point he was like, "Yeah, I just don't race races that my athletes are in because it's not a good look for me to go out and beat them." I just wonder what those conversations like. I mean, with a coach on that level, are Hans and David talking strategy for the race? If so, is David withholding pertinent information to Hans, or is he giving him everything? I picture David as a competitor more than I picture him as a coach. And so I think as a competitor, is he giving Hans the best? I don't want to seed any doubt into Hans's mind. I'm sure they've talked about this. What do you think, Joe, being a coach?
Knowing David, I don't think he would ever withhold. I think if there was something where there's ever like them talking together, I would see a strategy where they work together, because Hans can clearly keep up with David. And,
that's a fun thought.
I think
so like
teamwork,
and then race the final 5 miles, final 10 miles.
Exactly. Or at least like pace
that
up to Forest Hill together. Right. And it's like, you basically have a pacer, and studies and countless psychological studies have shown that you will always do better when you have competition. Again, going back to the point before where you have a hot field, more people are going to push themselves. Like, I think without Jim in front of Rod Favard last year, I don't think Rod runs that time. I think Rod runs that time because Jim's ahead. I think David and Hans could work together. And then that just pushes the field even more. Because I think, again, sheer fitness wise, I think those two are like sheer fitness the most. Now, sheer fitness doesn't always win, right?
Yeah.
I've seen guys like Cole Watson, who's like, I mean, just ridiculously fit. Like he hasn't cracked the top 3 at Western States yet, but I think fitness wise he does, because it does come down to execution and how you handle the race too. But I think sheer fitness wise, you have 2 of those guys, if they work together and push the field, my gosh, like watch out for a fast year.
Yeah.
Well, here's what's crazy though, is like, what could David possibly tell Hans? He hasn't ran Western States and he's only got 200s under his belt. So like, there's not even much intel that you can really be withholding. So yeah, I think they can both come together in the sense of like, strategize, and it helps benefit both of them being, new at this race course, right? And they can both have the familiarity and comfort off each other. So I think that's huge for both of their race day executions, to know that they've got each other there just as a familiar face and somebody that they clearly are used to talking to. But I mean, a name that we can't fail to mention and is like in the Adam Peterman bucket is Vincent, right? Like a UTMB champion who ran sub 20, so Jim, took down the course record, but like, I mean, that's crazy, right? Like that he doesn't even get a blip, not even a mention, a peep, nothing, right? Like we talk about, the 2 injuries or 3 injuries that have happened, right? But it's like, we still have plenty of names to insert there and still get excited about the race.
Yeah, people forget he literally won UTMB, like the world championships of ultra trail running, and comes in the top 3 at Chianti with Killian and Jim, like
and was making moves at Killian late in the race, like trying to gap him on certain areas, and then Killian would catch. I mean, it's crazy, man. Put some respect on that guy's name
for real.
Let me give you. I just love it. I'm already smiling. Killian's fastest time at Western States is 15:34. And
perfect.
Courtney's fastest is what did we say? 15. Well, we said 15:29 earlier, but then I wrote down 15:13.
No, 15:29 is Courtney.
Okay, well, I don't know why I wrote
15:13 was Peterman.
Oh, that's right. 15:30 was Peterman. So 15:34 is Killian's fastest. Courtney's fastest is 15:29. So Courtney.
And there's an asterisk on that too, because Killian was wearing white spandex and Courtney was wearing her short knees. So she was even less aerodynamic than Killian was.
Dude, if Killian doesn't wear the white spandex this year, I'm going to be so disappointed.
And, okay, and another point here, important to note, calling back to States Debates episode 1, one of Troy's arguments was that Wolfie can't possibly know something because he hasn't been to Western States, and we had some fun. We had some fun with that. However, your argument right then, Brian, against David Roach was that he has only done it twice. So what could he possibly know? Now, we can't arrive at things intellectually. We arrive at them faster if we experience it, but we can get there. And someone like David Roach still could bring some intel.
Absolutely.
Having not done it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Some ethereal intel, just no boots on the ground. He's never been.
Any final thoughts?
Man, I don't want to call like who won or who didn't, but I mean, I think it's a pretty even argument. Like even as I was doing the research, it's hard and tough. I mean, I think my biggest takeaway from this whole thing, I think both of them are vulnerable course records. And I think just the progression on the sport, men, women, both sides of the field, I mean, I think is just astounding over the years. And I think the one big thing to take away from this is that like the sport's just getting better and it's getting faster and it's improving. And whatever field that you're on, I mean, I think that you just look at all the developments and just the way that the training and racing strategies are changing. I mean, it's just such a cool time to be in the sport. So, for my takeaway from this, I mean, I think it's a dead even argument. Like, obviously, like we came on taking sides too, and Brian, you might be like, screw you, Joe. Like, mine's more. And I would love it if so too. But I mean, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the sport is changing and it's evolving, and Western States this year will be a good benchmark of how much we've progressed. And I think that's the coolest thing for sure, especially when you don't have the 2 course record holders in there, because then we get to see what the field is going to rise to without the 2 champions on there. And I think that's what makes this year so freaking exciting.
Yeah, it's great. What I love about the debates is that these go into the annals, and so we're going to call back on it, whether it's next year, this year, 5 years from now, somebody's going to be proven right. But I think as it stands today, it's a draw, and we accomplished the goal. I mean, I just had a fun time with you guys. It's always fun, to get in here and talk about things that, again, these are conversations that, typically year over year never happen about Western States. A lot of times we just get the same, regurgitated, athlete interview. And, these are fun. These are the things that, like, if you're a fan of basketball, you have, outlets that talk like this. And so, Joe, thank you for coming on, man. You brought your A game with it, had facts to back it up, and cool opinions. And yeah, man, it's great, man. If we ever do more debates, I definitely want to have you back on.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And shout out to you guys, because you guys are just doing like just these cool creative outlets like this. And in a world where there's just tons of ultra podcasts and tons of people just doing a lot of the same stuff, but you guys are doing something different. And I always respect anyone doing something different, just like the athletes out there at Western State.
Yeah.
So kudos to you guys. And this is an honor to be on.
Yeah. And a final word here to wrap it all up is that we talked a lot about course record. Joe alluded to this at one point. Like, are people out there racing to win? Are they going for the course record? I think either way, we're going to have an awesome race with these names in it, even just with the win. Now, does it go down in history with the course record? Obviously, we're having this debate because we think it's possible this year, but man, a great race. You talk like NBA, talk other sports, like any of those icons want the win more than they want the individual awards, more than they want the MVP. They want the championship. And I know it's an individual sport, but the point is that they want the win and they're racing for the win. So even if it's like 16 and a half hours for the men and they're that far behind the course record, if it's a good race, like, man, what a great day that's going to be. And I think we're going to get a great race no matter what, and possibly course records. So this is great. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Let's do it again.
Appreciate it.